Welcome to a new daily top AskReddit video. Today's topic:
what is the greatest, fuck it, I'll do it myself, moment in history? The man who invented the automatic switchboard, switchboards used to require a person to physically move a cable to connect the call, did so because his funeral home wasn't getting any customers. The lady operating the switchboard was the wife of his rival and was redirecting the calls to her husband. Instead of complaining to the phone company, which would have probably gotten her fired if they found sufficient evidence, he took matters into his own hands and made her entire job obsolete. You know what? Fuck you, automates your job. My nan used to operate a switchboard in the UK. In I wanna say the late 60s, early 70s, and has told us the story many times over of listening to Roger Moore's wife verbally abusing his agent, manager or whoever it was over trying to get him to make the move from film to TV. Nan and her co-workers used to be like, it's Roger Moore's wife again, and they'd all listen in. In hindsight, it's probably not the most ethical use of a job, lol. As a kid in South Carolina, we had a local boogeyman, serial killer named Pee Wee Gaskins who had lived in our town. Sometimes parents would scare kids saying things like, if you don't do your chores, Pee Wee will get you. Difference for me was my mom was a phone operator and handled calls from the prison, so she actually talked to Pee Wee a couple of times a week. Dr. Barry Marshall for infecting himself with H. pylori to prove they were the cause of ulcers. He earned a Nobel Prize for his efforts. Seriously, go watch old TV shows and movies. There's always some guy chugging Pepto or mainlining ulcer medicine because they're 5 minutes past the deadline. Dr. Marshall killed the billion-dollar ulcer medicine industry. And my gratitude. For years, people told me I had to relax and calm down because that is what was causing my stomach pains. When my doctor tested me for H. pylori, I was off the charts, his words. A dose of antibiotics and a week to heal, and my problem was gone. H. pylori, if left untreated, is likely to cause stomach cancer. The doctor who had to do his own appendectomy in a mirror because he was the only one who could do it in Antarctica. The first guy to remove bladder stones via the urethra decided he didn't want to die, that was highly likely with the operation going through the perineum, designed his own tool and practiced smashing up nuts in his pockets with it. Then he jammed it up his own cock and solved his own problem. I forget his name. Yeah, I think I'll just die, thanks. Famous writer Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the BFG, James and the Giant Peach etc., developed and patented a surgical device to treat children with traumatic brain injuries. Dahl had no medical training, he just did it. Dahl's 4-year-old son was injured in a car accident and developed dangerous pressure on his brain due to swelling. Surgeons installed a shunt in Dahl's son's skull to drain fluid and relieve pressure, but it kept clogging. There was no better solution on the market, so Dahl worked with a toy maker to design a new shunt that drained fluid without clogging. Dahl was able to patent the design and it was subsequently used to treat thousands of children. He was also a huge supporter of measles vaccines after his daughter died from measles. Damn, dude had it rough. In 1959, Dashrath Manji's wife died from injuries resulting from trying to cross the mountain to access the closest hospital. There was no road, so he, over the course of over 2 decades with a hammer and chisel, moved the F-Seekin mountain. His country, India, made a postage stamp with the mad lad's face on it. Dude swore vengeance on a damn mountain and won. There is a movie made on him as well. He literally woke up every day for 20+ years and went to the mountain with the hammer. It was 55 kilometers drive from village to closest town with facilities. It's around 15 kilometers now. Nature be like this, MF got hands. Dr. Tracy Dixon Salazar, who went and got her PhD in neurobiology because her daughter was having seizures and nobody could tell her why this was happening and nobody could treat her daughter. She found a treatment when nobody else could. Incredible woman. Amazing. A similar story is Sonia Valev. She is diagnosed with genetic prion disease. Basically she has the gene and it can become active at any time, which causes rapid dementia and death within maybe a year. With this information, both her and her husband got PhDs and she now leads a team researching her disease. Absolutely metal as fuck. Martine Rothblatt was similar. Her daughter had pulmonary hypertension, blood pressure so high it damages organs, for which there was no real treatment. So she developed one, and it's still used today. Martine is the only reason my niece is alive today. I'll kiss her feet if I ever meet her. Didn't Lamborghini start making supercars because the owner tried to buy a Ferrari and they wouldn't sell to him? He thought the clutch was garbage. Met with Enzo Ferrari to complain about the clutch and what he believed could be done to make it better. Enzo dismissed him, saying that he should stick to building tractors. As if tractors don't have a clutch. Close. Lamborghini has a complaint about his personal Ferrari, and they dismissed him since he only built tractors. So Lamborghini started a rival car company. Ford tried to buy Ferrari. They kept losing in races against them, and wanted to buy him out. Enzo Ferrari refused to sell the racing division. As the story goes, he invited Ford and their lawyers to Italy and sat down, and when he realized Ford wanted the racing division, he asked to have a lunch break, and just never came back to the meeting. As a result, Ford and Shelby collaborated and gave us the Ford GT, which, in its second or third year at the 24 of Le Mans, absolutely dominated the competition, and continued to do so for the next 3 years. Basically, Ferrari is their own worst enemy. Well, that and maintenance. Ford vs. Ferrari is one of my favorite car movies that chronicles this very story. Wikipedia passage about the US soldier Audie Murphy at the Colmar Pocket in World War II. The Germans scored a direct hit on an M10 tank destroyer, setting it alight, forcing the crew to abandon it. 81. Murphy ordered his men to retreat to positions in the woods, remaining alone at his post, shooting his M1 carbine and directing artillery fire via his field radio while the Germans aimed fire directly at his position. 82. Murphy mounted the abandoned, burning tank destroyer and began firing its .50 caliber machine gun at the advancing Germans, killing a squad crawling through a ditch towards him. 83. For an hour, Murphy stood on the flaming tank destroyer returning German fire from foot soldiers and advancing tanks, killing or wounding 50 Germans. He sustained a leg wound during his stand, and stopped only after he ran out of ammunition. Murphy rejoined his men, disregarding his own injury, and led them back to repel the Germans. He insisted on remaining with his men while his wounds were treated. 81. He was 19 years old when this occurred. I remember reading that they had to fictionalize some aspects of a movie made about his actions because they thought audiences would not believe he did what he did. I have a personal theory about men who survive doing things like that. If you were on the other side and saw someone exposing themselves to fire so blatantly, would you take the time to reposition and aim at them? Surely someone else is going to hit that very easy target and your distraction will give the enemy an opening. But if everyone thinks like that, suddenly the lunatic in no man's land with a satchel charge clenched in his teeth makes it across. Only a 19-year-old could be that confident of his immortality. He was hardly confident of his immortality. He grew up dirt poor in Texas and shot game to feed his brothers and sisters. Did odd jobs until he was old enough to enlist could get away with forged birthdate documents and met the Army's minimum weight requirement. Knew it was high risk, but it was also a paycheck to keep the family housed and fed. He was a scrawny 5 feet 5 inches teenager. Phil with small arms saved his life several times. The rest was trying to survive and a lot of luck. He described himself afterward as a fugitive from the law of averages. Edit. Thanks for the correction about his age. Missing a big piece of info here. The Browning .50 gun was pod-mounted on the tank destroyer, however, it had a limited field of fire from the mounted position. So Murphy at points picked it up, and was hip-firing a freaking Browning .50 calories, which weighs 84 pounds. Without ammo. Murphy was 5 feet 5, and about 95 pounds. So, on top of being atop a burning tank destroyer, and being under heavy fire, and getting wounded multiple times, and calling in artillery barrages, the dude went straight Super Saiyan and was pulling off superhuman feats in the process. There's a reason why he's the most highly decorated soldier is US military history, and why the dude died so young. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. Dude died in his mid-40s in a plane crash. Newton inventing calculus. He was trying to solve problems that were unsolvable or very tedious to solve. Instead of trying to solve them with the help of his peers, he simply invented a new branch of mathematics to solve them. And then he basically discarded his invention after he achieved his goal because he moved on to other problems. Later there were rumblings about a new way to solve problems and he's like, oh yeah, I did that years ago, it's in some of my journals over there. And then he got pissy that he had to share credit with Leibniz, despite never publishing his works. Also Leibniz, notation is so much better than Newton's. It's the best, especially when you piss mathematicians off by treating it as a fraction. Some say he discovered it. There are still some unsolvable partial differential equations, or at least there were back in my day at uni where we still used an abacus and a slide rule. Lol, I never forget getting to Laplace transforms as a junior engineer and thinking, why didn't you teach us this to begin with? Question mark. To paraphrase Feynman, the best way to solve differential equations is to know the answer. North Korea attempted to hack someone who used to do cybersecurity for the Department of Defense in an attempt to steal some of his hacking software. He notified the FBI and after waiting a year for nothing to come of it, he decided to hack into servers and routers of North Korea and effectively took down their internet as well as virtually all of their sites for many days. https://www.wired.com/story/p4x-north-korea-internet-hacker-identity-reveal/ He's also a Redditor that's been posting some AMAs lately. U./punk. This was a good one. The woman who delivered her own baby by C-section. I guess she has several kids and knew the baby was in distress, but her husband was at the bar. So she took a shot of alcohol and delivered the baby. They all lived, even the husband. I laughed at, even the husband, rolling on the floor laughing. John Stapp, Air Force doctor who was convinced that more pilots could survive if their seats didn't disintegrate on crash landings. He proved it by strapping himself into a Mythbusters-style rocket sled and not dying. His work led to safer planes and cars. By riding the decelerator sled, Stapp demonstrated that a human can withstand at least 46.2 grams, in the forward position, with adequate harnessing. This is the highest known acceleration voluntarily encountered by a human, set on December 10, 1954. Stapp reached a speed of 632 miles per hour, 1,017 kilometers per hour, which broke the land speed record and made him the fastest man on Earth. http://www.ejectionsite.com/stapp.htm. Holy crap, that's a lot of G.